Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a great weekend. So, this is something new that we're trying to start out here. So, it is football season, and we are already into week 2, which, if you do follow me on Instagram, you would see that I did correctly predict Buffalo would beat Miami last night. Really hope Miami's quarterback can recover, but overall, Buffalo definitely pulled out a huge win. The point difference was probably more than I suspected, but my main idea was, assuming Josh Allen was okay, Buffalo would pull off the win because it just seems that although Miami has become a better team the last couple of seasons, they still just cannot seem to pull it off any time they face a good team. Like, they've proved they can beat a bad team, maybe a mediocre team, but it's just people like Buffalo, Kansas City, probably Baltimore, Detroit, any of them, they are going to lose. That's just the way it is. At least it is right now. So let's kind of get into my predictions on who I think has the advantage for week 2. Now, I just want to start off by saying that I'm no huge expert and every single player in the NFL. If you're into fantasy football, go watch SportsCenter on ESPN because I'm not great at providing fantasy picks, but just based on my experience, based on what I know about the NFL, based on previous seasons, and based on what I know about some of the big players like the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, people like that, I could definitely provide some good information. And keep in mind, this is just my opinion, so I could suggest you make certain bets, but I'm not responsible for your losses, or your wins for that matter, so that means you don't have to give me a cut. Let's talk about some of the first games for Sunday. So we've got San Francisco versus Minnesota. I gotta say, definitely San Francisco put on a good performance against the Jets on the Monday Night Football game. I would not count out San Francisco. If I had to choose one, definitely would go for them. Brock Purdy's in good shape, but also, if you want to talk about Christian McCaffrey, that they might struggle because Minnesota definitely had a very good game last Sunday. So they definitely surprised a lot of people, but I still think that San Francisco has the advantage. And I've kind of realized that, hopefully McCaffrey recovers. He can play some this season. But if there was one star of the Monday night game with San Francisco, it was definitely Jordan Mason. I mean, he ran 147 yards. So if they don't have McCaffrey, they're pretty much covered with Mason. And as long as they got like Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, I'd say they're easily going to beat Minnesota. Well, maybe not easily, but I definitely have got them winning. Because let's see, Minnesota, who did they play? The Giants. And even with Sam Darnold, who did he play for? The New York Jets, Carolina Panthers, two teams that definitely have a bad reputation, and he beat the Giants. But then again, there's a lot of people that don't expect much out of the Giants. I mean, I see some good stuff in Daniel Jones, but that's a different conversation. But definitely, Minnesota is probably going to outperform expectations, but at the same time, people expected them to be like an F this season, and so they're maybe going to be like a C. So, still doesn't mean like playoff material, definitely not Super Bowl material, but they definitely have more life than people thought. Because what were the betting odds? I think at one point they were plus 1,000 for the Vikings to win NFC North. But I'll still pick San Francisco against them. So who else do we have? The Buccaneers versus the Lions. So for this one, I would probably go with Detroit, but Mayfield has definitely surprised me, and I definitely took a liking to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, being a Brady fan. I don't want to overestimate Mayfield, but I think it could be a little more competitive than people think. So Jared Goff, definitely don't count him out. Detroit is definitely not one to underestimate, and I did feel that they would beat the Los Angeles Rams in the Sunday game, but Los Angeles definitely put up a fight, sending them to overtime. So I do think overall, like, I don't really know how well the Buccaneers are at this point. Still earlier in the season, but they had a pretty high win against Washington. So I still think the Lions have the advantage, but I don't think they're going to win by a huge amount. That's just my opinion right here. So then we have the New York Jets versus the Tennessee Titans. So everyone thinks, and I think it's mostly Jets fans, almost any time I see some meme, some prediction that the Jets win AFC East, or, oh, Jets are going to the conference championship, stuff like that, or some even going as far as saying Jets will win the Super Bowl. That's not happening. I mean, look, they will probably have a better season. They might break that streak of going all these years. I think they have the longest drought in the NFL of not going to the playoffs, but they could possibly get to the wild card game. They could be like one of the wild card people in the playoffs. I really don't think they're going to win AFC East. Definitely going to be something to watch, though, with Miami. Really hope Tua recovers. But I still think Buffalo will easily take that division, especially showing what they did against Miami. And believe it or not, Buffalo was a slight underdog in Thursday night's game. But as far as it goes with the Jets and the Tennessee Titans, I mean, no one expects anything out of the Tennessee Titans, but they do have Tony Pollard, who I feel really carried Dallas the last couple of seasons. So I'm going to go on a limb and actually say that the Titans pull off an upset. They do have home field advantage, and that's definitely a good moneymaker if you want to place your bets on the Titans. I wouldn't recommend, like, pushing a lot of chips towards them, but you do have to keep in mind, if it's an underdog, you could bet less money and still win more because of the odds. But I really think that Aaron Rodgers is trying, but he's still got a long ways to go before he goes back to being the Aaron Rodgers people knew him as when he played for Green Bay. So I'm going with Titans here. Chargers and Panthers. So I will probably go with Chargers on this one easily. I think just based on what I saw last week, I know that, like, the first 2 or 3 weeks, a lot of people say don't place a lot of bets, so wouldn't encourage doing a lot of high bets. But this one, hey, you want to make a little bet here, go for the Chargers. They definitely had a pretty good win against the Raiders, and I do feel like the Raiders are a stronger team, not a strong team, but a stronger team than the Panthers. I think the Panthers will do better than last season, but that's not saying a lot. They set the bar pretty low. And with how well of a victory New Orleans had against Carolina on Sunday, I would easily say, yeah, Panthers just won't win. Maybe Chargers won't have a blowout victory because they definitely still have a lot to work out with the team. But I do think that they will have an improvement from last season and that they will go 2-0 after this week. So Chargers for that game. So then Seahawks versus Patriots. After seeing the Patriots pull off that upset against Cincinnati, people are thinking, oh man, Patriots are getting back into it. I mean, sure, they're going to probably outperform expectations, but still, that's like the Panthers. They set the bar pretty low last season. What was their record? 4-13. Okay, if they even go 5-13, that's still outperforming expectations. But seriously, that's still not that good. So I will easily go with Seattle on this. They had a great win against Denver last week. So I'd say Seahawks beat the Patriots at Gillette Stadium. And then we've got Indianapolis versus Green Bay. And same thing with Miami's quarterback. I definitely feel for Jordan Love. Hope he doesn't miss too many games. Hope he gets back into it. But then think about Indianapolis. People weren't expecting much out of them. The last couple of seasons, they had low expectations this season, but then Houston, they're like, oh man, they really got a stacked team now. And they beat Indianapolis by 2 points last Sunday. I will go out on a limb on this one too. If I had to bet on one, I would go for Indianapolis. Slightly higher betting odds. They're a slight underdog, but I really think that Green Bay's backup quarterback, Willis, he's got a lot to work out. And I really think just Jordan Love being out will really cost Green Bay. So I will go with Indianapolis on this one. So then we got Cleveland versus Jacksonville. So Cleveland was actually a slight favorite to beat Dallas last Sunday. What was the final score? 33-17. Yeah. I don't think Cleveland's going to be a horrible team. They have Deshaun Watson. I know he can do good. And I don't know if they still have Joe Flacco, but he was still able to carry the team last season, even though, who was it? They lost Deshaun Watson. They lost Chubb, the running back. So they still were able to get to the wild cards. I don't really know. I don't know if they will win this game, though, because Miami was playing a pretty good game against Jacksonville. Just based on how Miami's been playing lately, they played a pretty good game against Jacksonville. Both the teams who were seen as a joke 5 years ago, they are starting to perform better. But I do think that Cleveland still got some stuff to work out, and I think Jacksonville will take the win in this game. So then, of course, we got Raiders and Ravens. So I think that one's a no-brainer. Baltimore definitely put up a fight against Kansas City. I really felt that Baltimore couldn't pull it off. I did go for Kansas City. For one thing, I will not bet against Mahomes, and we'll probably hear more about that as this series goes on. But I will definitely go for Baltimore on this one. The Raiders, I don't think they're going to cut it. I think they're really going to struggle this season, especially with them firing so many people last season. Who was it? Their quarterback, their coach, possibly their owner. I don't know the whole details. All I know is that they had to redo a lot last season. So they're trying to get their act together, but definitely they can't pull off a win against Baltimore. So then we have Saints versus Cowboys, and I think this is the first time since fall of 2021 that the Saints have played the Cowboys. And Cowboys did beat them by double digits. I remember that. And Saints were still having a pretty good season. I think that was right after Drew Brees retired. So Saints are the underdog. I know the odds some places are around plus 230, plus 250, something like that. So if you do bet on the Saints, you'll have a decent payout. And I know a lot of people, especially the Cowboys fans, are like, oh, they'll win that game hands down. It's possible. But I feel like this will be maybe like the Tampa and Detroit game. I think it'll be closer. Maybe the Cowboys have the advantage. But at the same time, anytime I think, yeah, the Cowboys are going to win this easily, hands down, they lose. And a good example of that would be one of the first games last season when the Cowboys played Arizona. Arizona was horrible last season, but the Cowboys could not beat them that game. And what were the odds? I think the odds were around plus 600 for Arizona. You'd bet like $20 on Arizona. How much would you have won? 120. So, I don't know. This game I feel is a toss-up, but I do feel it's more competitive than a lot of people, specifically Cowboys fans, think. So, if I had to guess, I would definitely, maybe not throw a lot, but maybe throw a little bit on New Orleans. I really feel or at least I have a weird feeling they will pull off an upset. So then we go Giants Commanders. Man, this one almost, after seeing Washington's performance last week against Tampa, and Tampa's not even seen as one of the really good teams. Maybe they're doing better, maybe they're good enough to be a wild card or even win the NFC South because they haven't been performing well lately, because that division's not the best to say the least. So almost I feel Washington, New York, that game is kind of like two of the not so good teams right now, or at least not seen as very good teams. They could definitely get their act together later in the season. I've seen it happen before, but right now, they're not really two of the better teams, but they are playing each other, and one of them has to win. So, after seeing how bad the Giants got slammed by Minnesota last Sunday, I will have to go with Washington on this one, but I would not put in a lot of money on them. But if I had to bet, I would go for Washington. So then we have the LA Rams versus Arizona Cardinals. So there's a division rivalry game right there. Believe it or not, Arizona is a very small favorite. I think the odds are almost even, maybe a little bit higher for Los Angeles, but Arizona is maybe minus 125, minus 130. They could pull off the win. I did see it happen. One of the few games that the Rams lost in the 2021 season where they went on to win the Super Bowl. Early on in the season, they did lose to Arizona, so it's very possible. I can see why Arizona's a slight favorite, but just going back to seeing Arizona, I mean, I know they almost beat Buffalo last week. I know that definitely factors into the odds, but I will still have to go with the Rams on this one. Detroit's been a really good team. I'm sure they will definitely have a pretty good record at, or maybe about just as good as last season. So, but then for Los Angeles to almost stop them, I think the Rams have the advantage on this game. I would definitely go with Los Angeles. So then we have Pittsburgh versus Denver. So, thing about that game, like if I had to go for one, I'd probably go for Pittsburgh because they did win last week against Atlanta, which still isn't saying a lot. I know everyone's thinking, well, Atlanta got Minnesota's quarterback. They're going to be a much better team. They won't be a joke anymore. Look, I know that Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins are not the same, but I still feel like Atlanta will have the same effect with Kirk Cousins as the Jets do with Aaron Rodgers. They might play better, but they're definitely not Super Bowl material, and I think best they could do is be in the wild card game in the playoffs. I could see that happening for Atlanta, maybe, but better chance the Jets will get to the wild card. Either way, I don't see much going for Atlanta, and I know Pittsburgh did beat them, and that was, who was it? Justin Fields, who played for Chicago, who people did not think was that good, but then he beats Kirk Cousins with Atlanta. And then we look at Denver last week playing with Seattle. I mean, sure, I know Denver's trying. They've got a lot of new players. They got a new quarterback. But I'd still say, based on what I've seen so far, I think Justin Fields can pull it off with the Steelers. I will go with Pittsburgh on this one. And then, of course, Cincinnati, Kansas City. As I said earlier, I am not going to bet against Mahomes. It doesn't matter who they're playing, what the odds are. I'm going for Kansas City, unless, like, Mahomes is out. But even then, I might still bet on him. Because even, like, the final game of the season, when they had their backup quarterback playing, Kansas City had already won the division. They were playing the Los Angeles Chargers. I didn't place a lot, but Kansas City was a slight underdog because it's like, well, they don't have to win the game. They could pretty much just try out some of their other players. And they still beat the Chargers by 1 point in that game. So there's just a lot of reasons I would encourage nobody to bet against Kansas City. And I know people who are diehard Chargers fans. I know Raiders fans. I maybe know some Denver fans, but I get the whole division rivalry thing. But it doesn't matter how you feel about Kansas City. I know that they just overtook Dallas for the most hated team in the NFL. I don't bet with my feelings. I bet with my mind. Who I think is going to win, who I think has the advantage. I don't care how I feel about the team. That's totally separate from how I bet. So, with that being said, regardless of how you feel about them, Kansas City Chiefs are still the number one team. I see them going to a three-peat. We will probably get into more detail later on in other episodes, but hands down, Kansas City has this game. Cincinnati pulls off the upset. Okay, that's maybe like a 1% chance. Like, the roulette wheel does hit 00 from time to time. So, obviously, I know Cincinnati has pulled off 3 upsets against Kansas City in the 2021 season and the 2022 season. They did pull 3 upsets, but Kansas City has beat them the last couple of times they played them, so I really think Kansas City has Cincinnati's number, but I don't know. Joe Burrow might know some stuff we don't. So there might be a chance they win by a field goal, but I would not count on it. Don't try to go for Cincinnati hoping they pull off an upset. Do the smart thing, bet on Kansas City. So then we have Sunday night game, Chicago versus Houston. So this will definitely be an interesting one. Now I know everyone's thinking with how much anticipation that there has been on Houston this season. Definitely they were a joke. They weren't suspected to do very good last season. What happens? They get CJ Stroud. They end up winning the division. They end up beating Cleveland and the wild card. And that was with Cleveland being the favorite. They did lose to Baltimore, but that was definitely a strong showing for a team that had struggled with a lot of players, a lot of quarterbacks. So nothing but props to Houston. However, let's think about week 1. Chicago beats Tennessee. Or it's like, Chicago was behind most of the game. They pulled 2 touchdowns at the end of the game against Tennessee. I know that they are expected to lose easily to Houston, or they definitely are a pretty good underdog. But that means that you'll definitely have a good payout if you bet on them. Do I actually think they will pull off the upset? I mean, just looking at it at the surface, I would think, probably not. Chicago might be a better team this season, but Houston, they've got all these good players with them. But also think about Houston narrowly beating Indianapolis in week 1. Houston squeaked by against Indianapolis. So the way I see that, I would actually go for Chicago on this one. In fact, I did do a 3-game parlay with Buffalo, Chicago, and Philadelphia. So I'll definitely have a good payout, but Chicago has to win. So far, I am on track with Buffalo's win on Thursday night. So that brings us to the final game of the week. But yeah, for the Sunday night game, I'm not encouraging a lot, but I would bet on Chicago over Houston. And for the Monday night football game, Atlanta versus Philadelphia. So what was I saying? Okay, just because Atlanta has Kirk Cousins doesn't mean they'll be much better of a team. At most, they'll go to the wild card in the playoffs. I really think Philadelphia has that game hands down. I don't really need to debate it. They definitely had some competition against Green Bay, but they still pulled off the win. And at the end of the day, Atlanta's definitely going to be a worse team than Green Bay, with or without Jordan Love. Philadelphia, easily on the Monday night game. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. This is just my opinions, my expectations on who's got the wins, who doesn't. And as far as it being, yes, I think there will be an upset with the New York Jets. I think there will be an upset with Dallas, possibly an upset with Houston. So it'll definitely be an interesting week to watch. And even if the games go in the completely opposite direction of what I expected, as what happened with week 1 from the 2023 season, a lot of stuff happens in the first few weeks. That's why I say, if you are betting, just pretty much do small bets. And of course, as every expert says, only bet what you can afford to lose. Anytime I make a sports bet, I already have the mindset like, okay, that money's gone. I cannot see that money again and I will be okay. But then if I actually win, I'm like, oh, holy crap, I had no idea I'd get this much more money in my account. So there's some good reasons to be a pessimist, or maybe see the glass half empty. That's my point. But what are your thoughts? What are your comments? Let me know. Also, if you don't follow me on Instagram, follow me at IHateEverything200, and I will be possibly doing some live videos where maybe after the game Sunday night, I might start a live video and we can have a little discussion on what you thought, what I thought, and based on how that went against or for my expectations or my predictions. So definitely a lot that can go into this. But thank you so much for watching the video. Hope to see you again sometime next week, and we'll see what happens. But good luck with your bets, your fantasy picks, and your team. Hey, go them, right? Hey, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe to the Napoleon and Gueco podcast so you are always notified when a new episode becomes available. We'll see you in our next video.